Resident Evil Genesis. A novelization by Keith R.A. De Candido. Chapter 8. Sorry about last night, Dr. Mariano Rodriguez said, as if that made everything better. Dr. Anna Bolt scowled at him as she entered the elevator that would take them down to the viral lab where they both worked. He was standing there waiting in the car, holding a cup of coffee in his hand, just as she was. They both took their coffee with cream and sweet and low, not equal or sugar, which was something she once found endearing. Next to him stood their lab tech, Johnny Wayne Carlson, who was holding a plate containing food for the rabbits they were experimenting on. Mariano, or Mo, as she called him whenever she wanted to annoy him, like, say, right now, had that mischievous smile on his face. It was the most adorable sight in all creation when they first started working together. Now, after 3 straight broken dates, it mostly made her want to punch him. Repeatedly. Johnny Wayne, on the other hand, was just smiling like a normal person. Once, Anna had asked Johnny Wayne why he was smiling all the time in the lab, and he said, "'Cause I usually gotta pay good money for theater like what you two give me for free every day." Anna was glad that somebody was getting entertainment out of it. Mariano was a brilliant biologist, a damn good-looking man, and fabulous in bed. He also had the emotional maturity of a particularly troubled 9-year-old, only with less couth. Their first date wasn't really a date as such. He came to her apartment, they ripped each other's clothes off, and had several hours of the best sex Anna had had since that amazing fling during finals week at Johns Hopkins. Their second date, which actually involved non-work-related conversation and being out in public, was a disaster. Every attempt at a third date had met with failure, as Mariano had managed to not show up for some lame reason or other. She was getting tired of it. Last night had been the most recent attempt at that third date. She was left waiting at the train station half the night before she finally gave up and went back to her apartment. As she entered the elevator, she said, "Whatever." She faced the front of the car, her back to him. "I'm really sorry, Anna. I just fell asleep. You know how long we've been working on the T-virus, and I haven't been getting enough sleep, and—" "I said, whatever, Mo." She didn't bother to turn around to address him. He winced. "Do you have to call me that?" Johnny Wayne tried and failed to suppress a giggle. "Show up for a date sometime and I'll think about it," she said matter-of-factly. "Look, you know how hard I've been working, and—" Now she did turn around and fixed him with as withering a gaze as she could manage first thing in the morning. "Yeah, I know how hard you've been working, Mo. You know how I know that? I've been working just as hard. The same bosses that are crawling up your butt have taken up residence in mine, and yet somehow, someway, I was able to haul myself to the train station for our date." "Yeah, but you're a girl. You don't need as much sleep." Anna blinked. "What?" "They did a study. Women don't need as much sleep as men do. It has to do with the different biological needs and differences in REM sleep. Plus, there's the estrogen factor." Mariano spoke with the same tone of authority that he used when he was presenting a paper in his field. Of course, his field had nothing to do with the study of circadian rhythms, sleep patterns, or the effects of gender on the same. "You've got to be kidding me." Anna stared at Mariano in open-mouthed stupefaction. Johnny Wayne was having a much harder time keeping his laughter to himself now. Mariano broke into that stupid smile of his again. "Yeah, I am kidding. But you almost bought it, didn't you?" She turned back around so she didn't have to look at him. No. Oh, come on, you bought it a little. No, I really didn't. You're no fun at all when you're angry, you know that? She rolled her eyes. That's kind of the idea. The elevator stopped at their floor, and she went out ahead of him. Look, he said, I'll make it up to you. Really? She asked dubiously. Yeah, really. Why don't we meet in the cafeteria tonight for dinner? She sighed, brushing one of her long locks of blonde hair behind her ear. I suppose it's a possibility. Good. 10 o'clock? She opened the door to their lab. The late hour was necessary given the amount of overtime they were going to need to put in. All right, 10, but maybe I won't show this time. Why not? Mariano asked petulantly. Because I'm busy. At that, Mariano hit her with that mischievous smile. Anna sighed, realizing that he was not going to take this seriously in the least. But then, was there any reason to? As colleagues, they had a great deal in common. They were both bright young biologists leapfrogging their way toward the top of the field of viral research. Thanks to Umbrella's resources, they were doing work light years ahead of anyone else's. In particular, they'd been taking Dr. Ashford's work and bringing it to a whole new level. Unfortunately, while they were more than able to work together and had made some fantastic breakthroughs, once you got past the shop talk, they had nothing in common. She loved chamber music. He thought Britney Spears was deep. She loved to read American Civil War stories, Toni Morrison novels, and Agatha Christie mysteries. He found the sports pages of the Raccoon City Times to be taxing. Her definition of art was Monet. His was a velvet Elvis. But damn, was he good in bed. Maybe she should just leave it at that. Johnny Wayne closed and sealed the door behind him, then went to feed Daffy, one of the rabbits. Johnny Wayne had suggested the name, saying it'd be after the cartoon character. When reminded that Daffy was the duck and Bugs the rabbit, Johnny Wayne shook his shaved head and said, Damn, always get them two mixed up. However, they stuck with the appellation. He knelt down by Daffy's cage, one of several along one wall, put the dish down into the slot, and watched as the white rabbit happily chowed down. Anna and Mariano moved down the 3 stairs to the table in the middle of the room to get started on the day's work. Before she could even set her coffee down, the fire alarm went off. Oh, Christ, Johnny Wayne said, getting up from watching Daffy eat. Not another damn drill. Great, Anna muttered. We're already 2 days behind. Now they pull this crap? Mariano grinned. Hey, at least now we have an excuse. Our work's being disrupted. I'd rather just get the work done. She gazed almost wistfully at the slides sitting on the desk in the middle of the lab, waiting to be put under the microscope or study. After the frustrations of the previous night, waiting around for Mariano to never show up, then a restless night of very little sleep, she wanted nothing more than to throw herself into her work. Instead, she trudged back up the 3 stairs that led to the door. With a sudden clunk, the sprinkler system activated. Water, ice-cold water, burst forth from the nozzles in the ceiling. Cold, fear-filled panic gripped Anna, as she thought there was actually a fire in the lab. However, a quick glance around in the room revealed that thought to be absurd. Hell, most of the room and the equipment in the room was made of not remotely flammable plastic or metal or both. Obviously, that stupid little kid computer had a glitch. Damn it, she exclaimed. What the hell's going on? Mariano asked. Resisting an urge to ask her partner how she could possibly know what the hell was going on, she instead barked orders. Get the computers covered. Move it. I'm trying, Johnny Wayne said, even as he did as she said. Get the experiments. Move them. Even as the panic left, replaced by anger and a desire to protect their work, Anna still found herself gripped in cold, and she wondered whose bright idea it was to use water that was apparently brought straight in from the Arctic for the sprinkler system. By the time she, Johnny Wayne, and Mariano got the cages, computers, and slides covered in plastic, the water was up to their ankles. Her long blonde hair was now plastered to her forehead and back, and her white lab outfit would have made her a dandy entrant in a wet t-shirt contest. She prayed that Mariano wouldn't notice and make a joke about it. As it was, she was suddenly very grateful that she had chosen to wear a nondescript white bra this morning. Since her shirt was so wet, an observer would have been able to make out, say, a lace pattern. That she didn't need. Last night, as she sat in the train station trying to come up with imaginative ways to fillet Mariano, she had thought she was at a low point in her life. 28 years old, living in a high-priced cave, with her only prospects for a relationship being a Britney Spears-loving twit with a cute smile who nonetheless couldn't be relied upon to show up for a date. Which wouldn't have been so bad if they weren't in a mostly isolated community of 500 people. If she couldn't even do a relationship right under these circumstances, and now this. A totally messed up fire drill flooding her lab. If this kept up, they wouldn't just be 2 days behind. The cleanup of the waterlogged lab would set them back a week or more. Looking up, Anna saw the omnipresent security camera, the Red Queen's eyes and ears. Wading over to stand in front of the thing, she yelled over the sound of the water that was still rushing into the lab through several nozzles. "There's no fire here! No fire!" "The code doesn't work." Ignoring Mariano, Anna instead repeated, "There's no fire here! No fire! What's wrong with you?" "The doors won't open." Mariano came back down the stairs and walked over to Anna. "This water isn't going anywhere." Anna blinked. "What?" "It's a sealed room." "No kidding. And here I thought the water was up to my knees because this room doubled as a wading pool." She walked away from Mariano before he could make some kind of cute reply. She turned to Johnny Wayne. "Help me with the doors." "To hell with the doors!" Johnny Wayne went over to the far wall, opened the emergency door, and pulled out the axe that was standard issue in every room in the building, thus acquiescing to the Raccoon City Fire Code. As if an axe would do any good in a room like this. Before Anna could stop him, Johnny Wayne splashed across the room, building up as much speed as he could in knee-high water, and slammed the axe into the window. He used the back end of the axe, since it was more of a sharp point. Johnny Wayne Carlson was a fairly big man who worked out regularly and could put a good amount of force behind an axe thrust. Based on how loudly he grunted, he used all his considerable strength when he hit the window with the axe. One small, pebble-sized piece of plexiglass popped out the other side. "Great," Anna said. "Keep that up for another 3 hours or so and we'll be home free." "You got a better idea?" Anna said nothing in response to that. She had nothing to say. "Fine." Johnny Wayne turned and tried the axe again. Another pea-sized bit of plexiglass was dislodged by the action. She looked over to see that Mariano was continuing to enter the code into the door, in the futile hope that maybe this time it would release the door. The water crept up to her waist. She couldn't even feel her feet anymore. Oddly enough, her primary thought was that she really regretted not getting another night in bed with Mariano. That, she thought as the water continued to creep up her chest, would make the crappiest possible epitaph. Chapter 9. Lisa Broward was as giddy as someone about to go out on a first date with her dream boy, and as nervous as someone facing a firing squad. The latter was the far more likely prospect. Her stomach felt like it had been tied into half a dozen slip knots. She hadn't been able to hold down a single meal since her and Alice's lunch at Che Buono. She and Alice had had several more illicit meetings, arranging to get her hands on the T-virus. Today was the day she would get it. After the last meeting, she had set things up with Matt. That was more of a challenge, since she couldn't just call him on the phone, at least at first. She set up an email account on a free service that was not likely to be traced to her. If somehow the email was traced back to the Hive, the person Umbrella would assign to find it would be her, and even if someone else in the company realized it was specifically her, she could chalk it up to her account being hacked. It might cause her some embarrassment, but she could live with that. Once the account was set up, she sent out a mass email to thousands of addresses with a text-only attachment that 90% of the email programs in the country would interpret as spam and block. The remaining 10% would get through and be deleted unread by the receiver. Anyone stupid enough to open an unsolicited attachment would find only a text file full of gibberish. However, one of the addresses that received the spam was one she set up for her brother. Matt checked that address once a day and waited for an email from this particular address. The gibberish was in a code that Matt had given her from his days as a federal marshal. Any halfway decent cryptographer could probably crack it in about 5 minutes, but the circumstances under which a cryptographer would even know of the file's existence were extremely unlikely. Sure enough, 2 days after she sent the email, Lisa got a phone call. "Hey Lisa, it's Matt." Putting on a surprised face for the benefit of any coworkers that might be looking on, not to mention the Red Queen's surveillance, she said, "Matt? What's the matter? Are Mom and Dad all right?" Matt laughed. "They're fine, really. What, I'm only allowed to call my baby sister when there's a family crisis?" "Allowed? No, but it's usually the only time you do call me. Besides, ever since you quit the Marshals, you've been penny pinching. You wouldn't make a long-distance call unless it was an emergency." "Well, it's not a long-distance call, actually. I'm in Raccoon." Lisa blinked in mock surprise. "What brings you out here?" "Oh, just a visit. Got restless in San Francisco, so I thought I'd come up and visit my favorite sister." "I'm your only sister, Matt." "Okay, so it was easy to rank you first. Doesn't change the fact that I came up to see you. Can you get away? I can be there in 2 hours." That was the important part. She had arranged to meet with Alice this morning in the mansion. Matt just informed her that he, too, could be at the mansion this morning, specifically 2 hours from now. That was perfect. However, she still had a role to play. After all, she'd taken her leave for the month when she and Alice had lunch. "Damn, I can't today. I'd have to run it by my boss. Maybe tomorrow?" "Maybe? Geez, Lisa, what are you doing down there? The Manhattan Project Part 2? Lisa swallowed. In a way, Matt's joke hit closer to home than she was entirely comfortable with. The T-virus was as deadly as the atomic bomb, maybe deadlier. Before she could reply to that, a high-pitched buzzing started. "What's that noise?" Matt asked suddenly. Sighing, Lisa said, "It's nothing. Fire drill." "You're in a hole in the ground. What do they need with fire drills?" "So we don't die a horrible death when something catches fire here in our hole in the ground? Look, call me back tomorrow morning, okay? I've got to go do the drill." "Yeah, fine. Bye, sis." Hanging up, Lisa got up and grabbed her gray suit jacket off the back of her chair. In some ways, this worked in her favor. The mild chaos of a fire drill would make it that much easier for her to sneak off and meet with Alice. Along with everyone else, she headed toward the fire exit. The space that held her desk had 2 ways out. One toward the elevator bay, with fire stairs between the elevators and the fake windows. The other in the back leading to another set of stairs. The one by the elevator bay was wider and better lit, so everyone headed there. Before she got to the bay, however, she saw a crowd congregating in the hall. Why weren't they moving forward? "What's the problem?" she asked as she put on her jacket, flipping her dirty blonde hair out from under the jacket's collar. "The doors won't open." Lisa blinked. She peered through the crowd to see that the plexiglass doors had shut, blocking access to the elevator bay. That wasn't supposed to happen until after the room was evacuated, unless there was an actual fire that necessitated sealing the room to prevent a spread. "What about the ones at the back?" One of the new technical support guys said. "Locked as well." This was going in a direction Lisa didn't like in the least. She was as familiar with the fire suppression systems as anyone, and she ran it through her head. The room was evacuated, sealed, and then flooded with halon gas until the fire went out. The halon would suck the oxygen out of the room, thus starving the fire. The problem, of course, was that the gas would also starve any animal life of oxygen, which was why the system was designed not to seal the room until after the evacuation was complete. The sole exception to this was if the fire was so out of control that the lives of anyone inside would be just as forfeit if they weren't sealed in the room. But there was no fire, and Lisa knew for a fact that the systems were working just fine. Something was horribly wrong. Several nightmare scenarios went through Lisa's head at once. One was that they had traced her and had sealed off this section, not because of a fire drill, but in order to make sure she herself didn't go anywhere. Another was that the Red Queen was malfunctioning in some way, which would be even more of a problem since 500 people's lives depended on the little brat being in perfect working order. That shouldn't have been the case, though, since Lisa herself was as familiar with the computer's workings as anyone in the Hive, and she'd found nothing wrong. But then, she'd been so distracted the last few days. A third possibility was that Alice herself had betrayed Lisa. Before a fourth possibility could even occur to her, she heard a nasty hissing sound. Within seconds, the air around her seemed to shimmer. "Halon!" she cried, even as the gas started to burn her throat. With each passing second, it became more impossible to breathe. Her fellow co-workers banged at the plexiglass door in a futile effort to get out. Lisa herself screamed, "Stop it!" at the Red Queen's security camera, the same one that Alice had shown her a recording from in the park days ago. The hypothesis that the brat had gone nuts was now foremost in what was left of her thoughts, and she wondered if indeed it had been her fault. Her mind hadn't really been on her job lately. Right now, her mind was only on trying and failing to take another breath. "Stop it!" she cried again, more hoarsely, even as she collapsed to the floor, her legs suddenly unable to support her own weight. The gas permeated the room, making it impossible to see. All week she'd been thinking about ways for the plan to go wrong, but this hadn't even made the list. From the beginning, she knew that this endeavor might result in her death, but not this way, not dying from a goddamn computer malfunction. She tried to yell, "Stop it," one last time, but she couldn't draw enough breath to formulate the scream. She did manage to say, "I'm sorry," though. Whether it was to her co-workers, Matt, Alice, Fadwa, or Mahmoud, she couldn't say for certain. Maybe it was to all of them. Unable to hold her eyes open, unable to stand, unable to breathe, she collapsed. She thought about Fadwa. After that, nothing.